Pedro from A&P-Reacts. I'm here today with Clemens to talk about his solo record, Worlds 2. It's out right now. It's a self-release. He has it up on his Bandcamp. Go pick it up. How's it going? How are you doing?
All good, yeah. Nice to see you again, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you and having you on the channel. Now, for such a creative guy, you went from Worlds to Worlds 2. There was nothing out there more inspiring than just adding 2 in front of Worlds.
I should have prepared for this. Yeah. Well, yeah. In a way, that's it. Yeah. Sometimes I go through a lot of thinking process to end up in a very simple decision. And I like this kind of style. Like, it's basically a soundtrack. And I make this kind of music also to be used in like media. So actually the tracks on Worlds 1, they are right now under different titles used in programs around the world because I teamed up with a publisher. So that's kind of cool, and people don't know that. But I always, want to also release it to people who like to just listen to it, like fans who are interested in it. And I mean, it's a bit fake because the first one, Worlds, that's just something that came to my mind, and now it was like, yeah, Worlds 2. Why not?
Sequel. Why not? Now, when you create these albums, do you create them thinking of a record, or do you work on each song individually, and then when you have enough material, you put it all together as one album?
It's a bit of both. What's actually cool about this one is that I was creating it, and it was just during that process and afterwards that I start to see that there was kind of a pattern, but it was a very personal pattern. So for some time I was thinking, like, should I put my thoughts about this record out? And for a moment I thought, let's do it. But then I felt it would take away too much from the listener to experience things for themselves. It's like a spoiler alert, or like I didn't want to put too much of a stamp on it. Mm-hmm. But for me, this album was actually very personal. There is like a journey, but it's not very obvious, and it's a very personal journey. So I could tell a little bit about it, but to be honest, that was only afterwards. So it's more like you create something and then you're like, hey, what did I do? And it makes sense to me now. And
so what kind of journey? I know it's personal, and I know from a listener's perspective, everybody's going to take their own
feel
and their own thing away from it. But can you share a little bit of what that journey is?
Well, yeah, of course we have had the pandemic and still have it, and a lot of things have happened. And I'm always the guy that is like, I don't try to go online and give my opinions about stuff like that. I just like to keep things for myself and make music. So I think a lot of these things found their way into these tracks. For example, I think, unfortunately, some people were really hit hard by all the things that happened in different ways. And I've encountered people, I've encountered some, rage, disappointment, and I've seen people change. So Leaving Earth to me stands for me wanting to get away from it in a way, the opening track, but also that I've seen that some people lost a sense of rationality that I found very hard to see and strange, and I try to understand it. So that track represents that for me, and there's an emotional gravity in that song, like, you want to get away from it and float in space and just look at things how they are. Alien Encounter is like meeting people that are very angry. So it's not actually an alien, but it's like the alien among us. And maybe it relates even to what I told you about Monster on Carrick Angren, like the lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. But that's what it represents to me. And there is like also an anger inside me of having had enough of all of that comes out, like it's like an eruption in that song. And then you go to Piano, which is a song that came to me during vacuum cleaning. Yeah. So yeah. No, but I was vacuum cleaning. I had the melody in my head. I thought, that's a cool melody, and I made a song out of it.
It's my favorite song on the record, by the way.
I saw, yeah. That's really cool.
I just love that song.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. And me too. And I didn't want to add a lot of other stuff because my tendency was always to bring in the orchestra and the bells and stuff. But I thought, no, this one needs to be just piano, no tempo, no grid, just record it. And that's what I did. And for me, that's that sense of peace after that you let go of, for example, emotions and you float in space in this sense. Like, okay, I feel good again. I can, have some kind of reflection here. And so after those two songs, that makes sense to me. March of the Ants is actually, here in Costa Rica, there is a lot of big ants everywhere. And I'm always fascinated by it. I'm walking the streets and I see like, I see them moving like big stuff and they work so well together. And I'm intrigued by that. I always think like we as humans tend to think that we are, up in the food chain. We can think, we can reflect, we are the dominant species, but I often look at it the other way around. Like maybe if you can't think, maybe that's even better because then you're more efficient, like those little guys. And it fascinates me.
The interesting thing about the ants is that they all work towards one common goal. They put their own personal agendas aside. There's no personal agenda. They understand that the survival of the individual depends on the survival of the collective, which is the complete opposite of humans. We feel so individualistic in our own way of thinking that screw the collective. As long as I'm doing well, I don't care about anybody else around me. I'm not saying you or me think that way, but in general.
Yeah, you don't see an ant standing up like with a microphone like, yeah, but I don't want to go that direction. Exactly. It's just not happening. I try to look for it, but
it's really interesting.
Yeah, so that song sort of came from that. And March of the Ants. There's a lot of, it's like an orchestra and there's a lot of different instruments working together. It's like an orchestra, what it does. And I like to see it as an example. I think like it can be inspiring to us to work more together, put our egos aside. I mean, a lot has been said about that maybe, but I think I truly feel like that. Like if these times and everything that's happening can teach us something, it's like, try to go in that direction a bit more. And I'm not good at that. I mean, I have an ego and an opinion, and it's sometimes a battle to see maybe a greater collective. And but I think the process can be interesting.
And I think using the music as a way for you to dive deeper into these topics, into these subjects, without necessarily having to voice your opinion in a more clear way. I think it's a very interesting way of reflecting on your own self. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's more about you reflecting about yourself than you telling other people how they should reflect about themselves. Maybe they can take something from your own reflection and apply that to the way they see the world. I think it's super interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, that's and in the process, I hope to offer some cool music because that's what I'm, trying to do. And I think it's better for me to do this than to go on Twitter or something and say like, I think this and we should, because usually that doesn't work. And that's maybe other people feel stronger to do that, and that's great. But for me, it doesn't really work. So this is like my way to offer something valuable, hopefully, to enjoy and at the same time maybe have a reflection. Exactly. Yeah.
When you're working on an album like this, on your own solo stuff, is there something that you really enjoy? Like, is there one part of the whole process that you really enjoy? And is there one part of the process that if you could hire somebody else to do it, you would?
Yeah, definitely. What I enjoy is that I can do whatever I want. There's no boundary. Like you said in the review, that's like that. It's like my playground. It's always like, what do I now want to do now? Jazz? Okay, I'll do it. Rap? Maybe classical? I'll do it. I combine it, and that's actually liberating. And it often gives me really cool ideas. For example, to come back to the vacuum cleaner, I recorded it and I put it in the song Communication Machine. I just got the idea, I'm going to record it. Maybe it is a cool sound. And that's so cool to do. It's like playing like when you were 5 and you got your first toys and stuff. And that's how it feels. The other thing that I'm you know, we as composers, musicians, we tend to do more and more ourselves as we are like laptop composers, musicians. But I strongly feel that, for example, mixing and even mastering, they are very valuable crafts, and there are other people that have devoted their whole lives basically to that particular part of the art. And a friend of mine, Patrick Damiani, he's an incredible musician and mixer. And thanks to the Dutch government, they had like a sort of COVID fund to help musicians, and I was able to get a funding from them, and I could hire my friend to mix the album. And I think that really lifted it to another level for me. And we worked so well together. I sent him the individual tracks and how I envisioned them, and he mixed them. And all the tracks were like first drafts. Like he sent them back. I said, it's perfect. There was not one correction. And so there was like a synergy in working together on this. And I would do it every time I can, I'm allowed to do it. I'll do it. Yeah.
When I started listening to the record, I was, to be honest with you, I was expecting some vocals on it, considering that the EP that you released had some vocals on it. So I thought maybe you were going to go, not a lot. I thought maybe you're going to use the vocals more almost as a narrator or an atmosphere sort of piece. But when I realized there wasn't any, I actually enjoyed the record a lot more because the music did the talking, and I didn't have to depend on somebody to tell me what to think. It was all about feeling the songs. When you're creating instrumental tracks like this, which are super cinematic, like you said, they have this really cinematic drive behind them. Do they give you more freedom knowing that you don't have to worry about where am I going to find room to put some vocals in here?
Yeah, because when you use vocals, it's a completely different approach. At least for me, because vocals, when you put them at the center of the music, it changes the whole palette. So, you know, going from the instrumental side is it feels very free. And for example, on the EP previously I did, the vocals are, you have to give them space in the mix and the composition. And there was, of course, lyrics. There was something you want to tell through the lyrics. And this is just purely, making a soundtrack, working from emotion, from visions you have, from your ants you see. I like that a lot, yeah.
As a composer, it's easier for you to express yourself through just music, not using vocals at all. Does that make you feel more comfortable? Is that your comfort zone?
That's my comfort zone, yeah. Even with Karak, for example, there was always an idea or a story I read that's in the back of my mind, and that sort of pushes the notes out and the palette to work from. And that's my core business, so to speak. Yeah.
You created 8 incredible movie scores. You could honestly put each one of these songs either in one really large movie that has different momentums to it, or you could put them in 8 short stories. I know that perhaps was a little bit on the back of your mind when you started the process. Do you see the creative process that way for yourself, creating 8 individual scores, perhaps tying them in as one larger score?
Thank you. Yeah, in a way, yes. And I also like to do different things. For example, I'm always working on different genres. Like one week I'm like, okay, I'm going to make something heavy or metal. And then in 2 weeks, I maybe grow a little bit tired of it, and I might want to make a kids-oriented background track or something. And I like that kind of variation. So for me, it felt also to have this record, like, doing different things, experimenting with different things, guitars. Then there's the cinematic, typical orchestra stuff. For example, on Awakening, you have this big orchestral team, but I don't want to do 5 or 6 of them, because then it would bore me to make them and maybe also to listen to them. But at the same time, it's a very, schizo record, because it goes from one to the other side and back. And,
it's very chaotic. There's a lot of chaos.
Yeah. And, but yeah, I figured like this is what it is. And I didn't try to, that when I have to separate everything, it takes much longer, because then maybe I would have only 2 tracks in the same genre and I would have to make 6 more, and I have to make them interesting. So that's also harder. So I like the soundtrack vibe, like it's a movie and you go from one thing to the other. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned some of your music being used for other things, for TV shows, for what have you, but let's go the other way around. based on what's out there on Netflix and the TV world, is there a TV series that you would absolutely love to work with and create the score for?
Black Mirror, you mentioned earlier, that would be something really great. Yeah. That kind of vibe I really love. Yeah, and I also take inspiration from these kind of series, movies, with this futuristic sci-fi dark element in it that inspires me. And even the composers that work on those kind of series, they often use really new ideas. I remember there was one episode, I don't remember, I think was it the Black Museum? It was this like really eerie, like almost theremin kind of sound. And I thought that's really cool. Whoever did that, you know, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Are you critical when you're watching these TV shows at home and you're listening to the score and you're like, you know what, I could have done better. That one over there is not as good because he dropped the ball here and there. Are you that kind of a person?
Yeah. Confession. Yeah, it's sometimes horrible. Like you think I mean, sometimes I really like it, but sometimes I think, God, you know, why? And usually I think there's too much music. I'm like usually like stay away, maybe hear a note when I work on a short film or something, but I think sometimes there's too much. But yeah, that's just my view. But sometimes you just want to switch it off.
Do you always start on the keyboards, on the piano when you're composing a song, any song? Is that your starting point?
No, but like I said, sometimes it's vacuum cleaning.
I thought the vacuum cleaning was the inspiration, but the starting point would be the keyboards. But okay,
yeah. No, it's sometimes in my head. Like I hear a melody, like, and I often sing it into my phone, like really crappy, like a melody or even a rhythm. And then I go to the keyboard or the piano, sometimes the guitar. Sometimes I also sing it. Like I have a melody and I sing it, and then I try to make it with cello. And then you really come to other melodies than when you just sit at the piano, because an instrument is always an opportunity, but also a limitation in the sense that you always go the same routes. So I try to, for example, I have a lot of things around here, like cool instruments to work with.
You just need a cowbell.
Exactly. Sometimes that's just it, you know. You slam it or you throw it to the house.
And maybe for the next record, instead of a vacuum cleaner, a blender, you're doing a milkshake or something like that, and a song will pop in.
Yeah, exactly. We can put some horror into it, like some, you know, hands and feet, and be cool.
Where do the song titles come from? Because as I was listening to this record, you were able to create a title for a track that really represents the track to perfection. I mean, before anybody out there who's going to enjoy this record, before you even press play on a song, you look at the title. That title tells you exactly what you're going to listen to.
That's really great to hear. Thank. Yeah. Usually afterwards I listen and then it's intuitive. So I think, what's this sound like? What does it sound like to me? And I'm like, okay, leaving Earth. This is like leaving Earth. It sounds like you're getting into the rocket, but also metaphorical. You're like leaving something, and that's how I do it. Yeah, there's not, and I like that. It should be emotional, intuitive. Yeah, that's how I do it.
I want to ask you a couple of questions outside of this solo project, outside of this album, and I want to ask you about the work, because you've been busy. You've been doing a lot of work, and you did a lot of orchestrations for the latest XDO record. It's not your first time working with XDO, but so I want to ask you, how is it to work with other bands, other artists, and have such an important impact on how those albums are going to sound like?
Yeah, I mean, it's I feel always honored to do it, and it's really great because you renew your approach. And for example, with XDO, you know, great guys, and they have a very good idea of what they want, and there is also a storyline. So I'm usually early on, I already know, like, okay, what's it going to be, and Nero this time, you know, twisted and fucked up. And you already start like, okay, you know, what am I going to do? And I'm starting to look like, what instruments do I want to put in? And they have ideas, and it's really great. It was really cool this time again to work on that. And it was like massive with all the percussion. I made like some synthesizer percussion coming out of the Carrick Angon record. I had some, you know, ideas to make it super brutal. So yeah, that's really cool, and yeah, it keeps you busy as well, because it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah.
And one last question for you. Speaking of keeping busy, you guys used to tour extensively with Karak Anger up until the pandemic hit. I mean, you guys were always on the road. Europe, Asia, North America, back to Europe, back to North America. You guys were like living off of a suitcase. And then you release an album, then the pandemic hits and you're not able to tour. I know you've been able to keep busy with your own individual projects and working with other bands, but mentally, how has it been for you to adjust from being a gypsy on the road to then being somebody who sits at home and watches Netflix and still does a lot of work?
Yeah. It's tough, and the toughest for me personally is the in between. Like, is it going to happen again? And you have to work and prepare. Like, for example, right now, you're getting ready. We have some shows planned, and then there's this threat, like, there's maybe things are going to change again. You can't do it, and that's like, that drains energy, to be honest, and a lot of other people as well, and the guys, of course, and that's very difficult. But yeah, I mean, what always comforts me, like, we're not alone in that, and it's hitting everyone. So hopefully, after some time we get out of it permanently, or at least for 99%. And yeah, so you try to adapt. I mean, I'm fortunate to have these things that keep me busy, and it's music, so I'm very grateful for that. And
that keeps you sane.
That keeps me sane. That keeps me sane, like behind these speakers here. Yeah.
And then you have vacuuming. I mean, who knew? You have something that it's super inspiring.
Yeah, it puts all the noise out, and I'm the one generating noise, so keep away. And this is my space, It's my newfound hobby.
Maybe in the future we'll have a vacuum cleaner driven record instead of keyboards. You just be like a pure vacuum cleaner sounding album. You never know. I'm sure you would make it sound great.
It would be cool, because I'm also a fan of, like, optimizing AC power for better sound. But I even hear differences when I plug it into one outlet versus the other. So maybe I can make like an audiophile vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. Wow, you're really able to do that, and that's incredible. For me, a vacuum cleaner is a vacuum cleaner, but that's just incredible. Well, Clemens, thank you very much for your time today. I always enjoy talking to you about your music. It's always a pleasure. The door is always open, and there's always a seat at the table for you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for having me. It's always a pleasure talking, and good luck as always with the channel. And,
thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see you on the road soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon. We'll see us. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.